You though, for those who have made it on time. My name is Robbie Mitchell. I'm with Internet Society. I seem to have been standing up here most of the week. Thank you to the PC for accepting all my crazy proposals. So today, the Internet Society, we have a long history of supporting sustainable peering. We have helped assist a lot of IXPs in this region, as well as other regions in the world. And we've been lucky enough to partner with some fantastic organisations such as APNIC, APNOG, NSRC to do this, because we all believe in that IXPs can assist with increasing performance, reducing costs, and improving overall resilience of internet. The catch cry is keeping traffic local. That's one project that has been always ongoing with the Internet Society since almost day dot. A more recent project has been about measuring the internet, the availability, the evolution, and resilience of the internet. And you might have caught previous presentations or even our mini workshop, I guess, that we had earlier this week, the Pulse Internet Measurement Forum. So Pulse is the outward-facing part of the project, I guess, which is collating all this open source data related to availability, evolution, and resilience of the internet. So we're not creating data. These are just all open sources, and some of these you most likely use in your own research or in your own business forecasting or just troubleshooting. And we're bringing them all together to try and show a holistic view of the internet, particularly targeted towards decision makers and who else, Emery? It's at a general audience, but more at that development and decision making area. But we feel that as well, the networking community and the research community can benefit from it when we start to bring these things together. Because sometimes when you bring a measurement that's been hiding in this laboratory for many years into the light, people look at it in a different way when it's put next to another one to try and make sense and context. One feature that we've worked on recently in this respect is the IXP tracker. And it's kind of doing a similar role as other IXP registries or databases are doing in terms of showing how many IXPs are in a country and how many networks are peering with them. Simple. You know, we're drawing from peering DB in this respect. So that's the open data source. We're also trying to then contextualize how much traffic is actually routing through those IXPs. So you can understand the impact that that IXP is having for the local internet and understand how much traffic is being kept local. So this is helping us justify our investment in IXPs wherever we're going to go. There's a lot to that, though, we feel that you can learn from doing measurements with IXPs. But there's a lot of limitations as well. This is not just with measuring IXPs, it's in measuring the internet. So in our respect, open source really limits us. We don't have the vantage point of a network or a large tier one network or a large CDN network who does have a greater understanding of traffic flows and all those sort of things. The vantage points as well, quality. We do vet it in a certain manner. There's trusted open data sources that we do try to use, but you know, there's some trial and error associated with that sometimes. And just having a discussion earlier today, you come to feel that there are some of these projects that were established 10, 15 years ago by PhD students, and they've been ticking over. They've been doing a job. They have methodology there. But when was that methodology reviewed? So we were thinking maybe we should go back and actually review some of these methodologies just to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing and something didn't creep in 7 years ago and we've been going off in the wrong direction. Anyway, consistency is a really hard thing as well. Previous session before lunch, I talked about data refresh. That's a huge limitation on anything that measured. I was talking towards power resilience and trying to get that sort of data because without power, we have no internet. No switching, no big fat pipes, no clever putting data closer to end users is going to help us when the lights go off. And the point of bias as well. Basically, you can interpret anything you want and put a spin on it. What I wanted to bring this together is we've developed this culture of IXPs and peering, and it's doing its job, but I feel there's a lot that we could probably learn more from these IXPs collectively. Also at a country level, but collectively, I feel that IXPs have a role to play in trying to meet the gaps that that are there in the open internet measurement process that are there that we're currently working within. And I'll have a panel of presenters here to go through this, and I'll introduce them soon and the roles that they play. But before we do, oh, and this is what we'll get to discuss. But before we do, internet measurement might be new to quite a few of you here in the audience. It is from more of an academic layer. So I'm going to invite my colleague Amrish Poker from the Internet Society, who has a background in this, just to give us a bit of a 101 with cat images, I believe. So I'll hand it over to Amrish. He'll give us a bit of an understanding of the challenges, and we'll talk to this afterwards with the panel. Thanks, Amrish.
Thank you, Robbie. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming in this very cold room. I'm really suffering myself. My nose is blocked and everything. So, but I hope the discussion will warm up the room, though. Okay, maybe a show of hands on people who know about internet measurements. All right. All right. And a show of hands of people who have actually done some internet measurements. All right. That's great. My slides are very introductory, and it's really to give you an idea of what we can do with measurements. So that's a very well-known phrase from Lord Kelvin saying that if you want to describe a phenomenon, and you want to talk about it in a satisfactory manner. So if you don't have numbers attached to it, it's quite unlikely that you will be able to explain that phenomenon to someone in a proper way. To get it short, I think what he meant is we cannot improve what we cannot measure. And that's the whole point of measurement, and also including internet measurements. So yeah, Robbie was talking about cat pictures. We usually joke about cat pictures on the internet, and in that case, if your cat picture is taking time to load, you are usually frustrated, and you would like to know why my cat picture is taking so long to appear, and that could be of multiple reasons. Because the internet, as you have heard over this week, is a complex system made of so many different things and so many different layers as well. So as there are many layers, it means there could be different things and different challenges happening at each of those different layers of the internet. And actually, each and every layer can be measured in their proper in their own way. So why do we do internet measurements? To understand basically the health of the internet and try to identify maybe bottlenecks and try to identify places where we can improve things so that at the end of the day, we have a more resilient internet, we have an internet which performs better. So there are two types of internet measurements, and one of them is active measurements. So think of it as you are knocking at someone's door. You go and knock at someone's door to understand whether the person is here. So this is actively probing the internet or something or someone to know whether it is alive or not. And this is what we call active measurement. And there is also the passive measurement side of things where you're actually observing, let's say you're observing traffic and then trying to understand what's happening, extracting the information of the passive measurement without interrupting the flow of the data. So this is passive measurement. So what can we do with internet measurements? So I would say internet measurement falls in the field of monitoring, so network monitoring. So there are many different things that you can monitor: performance monitoring, traffic monitoring, monitoring, just extracting a sample of the traffic and then analyze that. That's flow-based monitoring. You can monitor your device. So let's say you have a router connected to the internet, you can monitor what is the performance in terms of CPU usage, memory usage, those type of things. Security monitoring. Do you see attacks on your network? So you can see the frequency of those attacks. You can see where those attacks are coming from. So these are security monitoring. And then application monitoring is your DNS is on the application layer. So you would monitor performance of your DNS, resilience of the DNS. It goes on and on. Every single protocol actually, to some extent, can be measured. So bringing back to, let's say, an analogy with traffic, what can we measure? So as you can see here, this is, let's say, Google Maps sending you traffic data. So there must be probes in the network sending you this information so that we as users, we can have some information like this, like knowing where the traffic is. It means somewhere down there must be collecting this information. And this is what I will talk about as well. What are the information that we can collect? Latency, speed, packet loss. But that's information, I would say, of things going through the network, but information about the network itself. What is the map? What is the roadmap? What are the different paths? And this is the third point I want, like what are the secret highways that the data take to reach your destination? So this is about understanding the routing ecosystem. So there are different places that we could run the measurements, either locally. So for example, you can measure from your end device to your Wi-Fi endpoint. So that's local measurement. Or you can measure internationally as well, the wide area network. And for example, here we have RIPE Atlas, which is a very well-known tool that can allow you to measure from point A to point B, let's say from the southern tip of America to New Zealand. And there you can see latency between those 2 points. You can see which path the packets are taking to reach the destination. And I've just taken a view of Malaysia. And so this is the topology of the networks in Malaysia. As you can see, there are many networks. Those could be business network, content networks, and a few in the middle which are connected. So basically, they are providing transit or peering to the other networks, as you see in the circle. So to be able to build such a graph, we need information about how networks are connected to one another. And this is done by tools. So Philippe is here. He's going to talk about route views. Tools such as route views, or PCH or RIPE risks that are constantly collecting this information. And usually they would place those collectors in strategic places where networks can then share this information about their topology. By sharing this information, we researchers can now have an information on how things are interconnected. So, as Robbie mentioned, peering is such an important part of the internet now. And through peering, we can also have a lot of information. And this is what we will all talk about today. And so there are measurement opportunities through peering. At ISOC, we are running a study on understanding the network benefits of peering. So let's say if a network decide to peer with an IX, would they be increasing the number of networks they can reach? Would they lower the latency to some other network, to the networks that they can reach through that IX? So these are things that we are investigating. Obviously, there are data gaps. And because the visibility of the internet really depends on where the collectors are. And obviously, collectors are not everywhere. And there are data gaps. So one of the things that we will discuss today is how do we bridge those data gaps. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of opportunities that with the existing data set that we have, we can do a lot of measurement, do a lot of inference and predictions as well. And based on that, we can do a lot of planning. But then, as I mentioned, we have a lot of data gaps that is perhaps biasing to some extent our analysis. And the idea today is really to understand those challenges and see how all together as a community we can work together to solve this. Robbie, I think we are back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emrich. All right, so I want to invite my other panelists up here as well, in case you can't see them when they come up. Where is it? There we go. So, familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. Feel free to come up anytime. There we go. There we go. Good, good. So we've got Philip Smith, who will be talking about route views. He'll have his route view hat on. There are many hats. He probably needs one in here at the moment. Getting cold. There we go. We have Anand Raj as well. He has many hats as well. I put down Kolkata IXP. That's one of his original ones, but he has established internet IO. You'll have to remind me. IPON. AORI, yeah, the first indigenous internet measurement system in India. So they've been working on that since 2020. So we're going to get the perspective of a local IXP as that has gone on to assist with developing an indigenous internet measurement system. We got Christoph Diesel. My apologies, Christoph. We met in Sydney in 2016, 2017 at an internet measurement conference. That was my first foray into internet measurements too. And there's such a wealth of information and great stories that have come out of it ever since. But Christoph is with DECIX with their research department, so based in Germany. They do an amazing amount of research with regards to the data that they have. DECIX now being one of the big three IXs globally, and my colleague Amrish. So he's going to put those things into context and what we're also doing with the Internet Society. You had a quick specky at the questions that we want to get to. So what I wanted to go through, and we'll mix it up. I encourage panelists to ask questions of each other. I encourage you all to also put your hand up. We've got a roaming mic. ask questions along the way. Offer your examples as well. If you have examples of what measuring you're doing with IXPs or just even with your own networks, I'd love to hear it from you. We've got 60 minutes. We'll play with 60 minutes. So let's kick things off. Philip, for those who aren't aware of route views, what are you? You're right with that one?
No, I'm
yep.
fine.
Okay. You just don't know which one. Okay. Fair enough. That's all right. Yeah. Okay. What data is route views collecting at the moment, and how has it evolved over the years?
Reason I was hesitating is that when I tried to do this yesterday at the Women in Tech lunch, it blew the sound system. So with that system set up, so just be kind of careful with the mics. I try and leave them off if possible. So route views. So route views was started in 1996, and it just collects the BGP table. I mean, it really started off with a couple of ISPs in those days who volunteered to send what their view of the BGP table was, because, well, you know what your routing table looks like when you sit in your network, but what do you look like from somebody else's network? I mean, I was working at the UK ISP back then, and when Dave Meyer, University of Oregon, and those folks started route views running, that was hugely useful for us because sitting in the UK, sitting in the European internet, sitting with this tiny little piece of string across the Atlantic Ocean, you know, you have your customers whining about stuff not working, can't reach here, there, everywhere. We still had NSFNet and the acceptable use policy back in those days. And so trying to explain to customers that you couldn't actually access these part because you haven't signed the NSFNet's acceptable use policy became a bit of an issue. So being able to get to another view of a BGP table back then was really incredibly useful. And you could log into the router, you could do things like trace routes to find out where the path actually went to get back to you. So that project was started. It's been running ever since. A couple of years later, the team thought, hey, wouldn't it be useful if we actually started recording the BGP table rather than just providing, just a login prompt? So that archive has been added to ever since. So if you think about it, that's been going, getting on for 30 years. And we'll probably come to a lot of this later, is that becomes a serious problem of how to archive. But it's a huge archive for researchers. So BGP, security research, whatever else, are able to go to the archive, they can download the data, and they can do amazing things with whatever, we don't try and tell the researchers what to do, but the data is there, recording the BGP table. Soon after starting recording the BGP table, they also started recording all the BGP updates. So you can start seeing the announcements, the withdrawals, and so forth. So you've almost got this living history of what the global routing system looks like. So today, route views, 50 locations around the world. Robbie says strategic. We're trying to get there. I mean, it's strategic, but we're trying to make it better. And I think that's what a lot of the collecting organizations are doing. What is strategic and what does it actually mean? But fundamentally, route views is this, what we now call a looking glass, and where you can see the BGP table in many different locations in the world.
When you talk about locations, so 50 locations, what is a location?
So a location is internet exchange point. That's where we put the collector. We don't put it anywhere else. It must go an internet exchange point. It connects to the peering LAN along with the other members of the exchange point. The collector peers with the route server. So we see what the local routing table looks like for those who peer with the route server, so what we call open peering policy. But what we want to do at these exchange points is get the member of the exchange send us a full BGP table. So it's the BGP table as they see it. Seeing the local routes is fine. It's interesting who they peer with, but their view of the BGP table, because one operator's view of the table may be completely different from somebody else at the same IX. So you see the transit paths and so forth, the priorities and so on. The collector sits there, And then it has a second link, kind of what you call the transit link, which is the usually exchange point host or the sponsor of the collector at the IX. And that's a transit link. 10 megabits per second is all we need. And so that way, every 15 minutes, we can transfer the BGP table and the updates back to the archive, which is hosted at the University of Oregon in Oregon in the US.
Cool. Okay, we'll come back to a bit of that soon, and also where we're possibly not having visibility and locations that we might want to target. But I want to go to Anand. So Anand, Kolkata IX has a route view, is a route view location, is it?
Still not.
No, still not? Okay. All right, well, there's one we've already knocked off. So Kolkata IX, can you quickly just give us a starting point of how it came about? But what I want you to work towards is how measurement became part of the project as well.
Sure. Thanks, Robbie. I'll start from something in it start as an initiative of Internet Society Kolkata chapter. Around 7-8 years ago, some of the kind of initiative that we are doing is IPv6 and IPv4 training for the ISPs over there and network providers. Then we have seen that there is some issue in kind of understanding of peering part of it, and if they could peer at that region, that will be very necessary. It will be easy for them to exchange traffic among them and will have a local performance boost. We have started with an iPhone India Internet Foundation IX, 2 or 3 peers, Akamai and JRoot server connected with each other. I've gone to Philip. Philip was actually visiting that IX. He told, why don't you do a Raspberry Pi in the bird routing domain? We have just converted that server to a Raspberry Pi, and that Raspberry Pi was kind of having that root servers. Now, the measurement part of it, whenever we have started, it was only MRTG that was kind of serving the purpose. And therewise, the standardization part I'll come forward, why and the measurements are needed. The peering have started and many members have started joining. I thought that why don't we have something, a measurement management system and dissemination of measurement information among the peers. I thought if we could build something over there, but yes, IXP manager was there. So we have implemented that. It was flawless, easily, and then kind of all the traffic, all the measurements that we have started. We have started integrating tools over there, and then it was kind of a portal for each member to see what's going on, the looking glass and others. The second thing that came over there was Manrus was in making at the time. And whenever it has kind of started, it's for IXP, we have implemented the first community exchange point, which was implementing manners. And then we have given looking glasses and others. And there we found that, yes, the BGP table that Philip was talking about, it's not getting shared. And we wanted to get the root views of each and every ISP over there. So the nationally and internationally we could share. And there lies the challenge because they don't want to share, right?
Yep. Okay.
So alongside, I was working on a measurement platform because there are very few vantage points with the anchors of RIPE and SSE and others in India. Trying to understand what are the problem statements at the DNS, the application side of it also, and the BGP and the routing and pairing side of also.
I'm going to stop you there
Sure.
because we don't want to give too much away of the story. But just to wrap that up, you started the IXP and you saw that there was benefit for members, that they would be interested in understanding what traffic was going through there and potentially a selling point to be able to show that and justify their peering at the IXP.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. We'll go over to Christoph. Christopher, sorry. Chris, I'm always saying
Just Chris.
Just Chris, easy, exactly. Now, this is going global. This is blowing up here. So we've gone from a small local IXP. Now we're going global. We've got a global view here. How many IXPs is DECX now running?
About 40 globally.
40 globally. And in Germany?
In Germany, it's 5.
5. Okay. still very large. So you got a global understanding, I guess. You're pulling in information from all these different IXPs. Talk about a little bit of that information that you are measuring. And can you also talk about what you're offering to members, but the extension as well? You're also offering this sort of traffic data to researchers.
Yes, so it has been a journey for DKIX as well. When I started, like a bit more than 10 years back, basically there was DKIX Frankfurt. It was quite big back in the day, but 3 terabits per second, if I recall correctly. And we thought, well, basically there has been a research paper published, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years before I joined, where a huge academic research group actually used the IXP as a vantage point. And that was like one of the first publications in this direction, which said, hey, look, there is such a huge aggregation of networks. We can use this as vantage point and we get really and I'm totally with my colleagues on the discussion. So there are always specific views which might be very different depending on the vantage point, right? But we found actually a vantage point that shares a lot of properties with other vantage points and is not or is differently biased as the vantage points that existed back in that day. And we used this opportunity to collect some data. Of course, we had and still have the challenge of not what kind of data may we touch, how do we need to aggregate to be safe to not unveil unwanted information. But we believe that this can also be a great contribution while we scale new exchanges over the course of the past 10 years, like building out in Europe, in the US, and increasingly in Asia as well, that we have a view and not only share the raw data, because that always is a bit like a concern of you never really know what you share, regardless of how much you aggregate or not. And then we said, well, it makes a whole lot of sense to ask the questions and answer it and share the answers or the process of our questions. And then that's why we have a researcher team that does also research for the good of the internet. As in, we don't really have any business interest in some of the questions. It's just answering fundamental questions, how the ecosystem changes, grows, or evolves. And that is a huge part. Of course, we also have internal data collection, and basically it's all getting back to the great intro. It's all going back to passive measurements. Like that's the majority, even though we did for master thesis of students, maybe some active measurement, pinging the entire internet and such things. But that is really like, yeah, not that relevant of the work that we are doing.
Cool. I'm going to pass this one over so we don't get feedback. No, you might get feedback with this one, Amerish.
Test. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is better.
We learnt on Monday. So, Amerish, we've heard these different perspectives. Can you expand more as well on what we do, what we're doing with Pulse in terms of the data that we're collecting? And there's other opportunities out there in terms of what data we can draw from IXPs and the projects that are drawing data from IXPs and sharing it.
Yes. At the Internet Society, so on the Pulse platform, we have a feature called the IXP tracker, where basically we want to show the different, first of all, give people an indication of where IXPs are around the world, how many IXPs, and whether or not there is growth in terms of membership and capacity of those IXPs. And as Robbie mentioned, for now, we are simply taking this data from PeeringDB, which is a very nice source of information. It is a crowdsourced source of information where we rely on people to actually go and update the information as much as possible. But it is one of the main sources of data which is used at the moment. That said, we have another project where now we are trying to integrate, I would say, more live sources of data. And this can be route views data, route risk data. So route risk is just another version. It's the European version of route views, which is maintained by the RIPE NCC. PCH is they also collect routing information from the route servers of IXPs, where they are connected to, and also looking glasses. We talk about looking glasses is also contains a wealth of information. So those I would categorize as, let's say, live sources of data that can be used to show like the true picture of interconnectivity between members and IXPs and in between different peers of the network. And the Internet Society is currently working on a project on integrating those different sources of information so that whenever someone wants to have the information on an IX, they would have a global view of how and where they are connected, and also on the different, I would say, meta information about the IX itself, like growth and capacity.
Nice. There's a few things as we went along. You're all kind of pointing out challenges. This is a this is the hard thing about measuring the internet. Jeff Houston will always say, measuring is hard. Whatever you do, it's hard. And you all pointed it out in your own histories that this is a hard thing. I'm going to work way back here. Well, I might mix it up. So, Chris, the challenge for you said how sharing raw data and the amount of data that you're collecting as well is immense. That's one challenge. What other challenges are you also talking about?
Well, so collecting data, there is the technical perspective, maybe a lot of data, but you need to filter it down. You need to sample. How do you sample? Which sample bias do you have? So that's where the challenge starts. And then you need to archive the data. But if you have a long time series of databases back, like 10 years back, time series databases were not that evolved. So that had to be developed a bit, or we had to find formats to deal with this kind of data. Everyone spoke about big data, but basically people had 10 gigabytes on their hard drive and thought it's big data. Our data volumes were somehow different. And then there's this huge privacy aspect, which is or used to be clear in Germany, right? Or maybe EU. Our home context, the legislation
GDPR.
is clear. GDPR came in later, but yeah, exactly. Then we faced another challenge. But now we need to replicate this for each market, right? Because you have different legislation in each market.
Yeah.
So those are the challenges, and dealing with this kind of data. Personally, of course, I did a lot of research work, groundwork as well as my team. But what I've always, and that is maybe sort of an anecdote, if you want to maybe think of starting data analytics or internet measurements on your vantage points, or collecting some of the, or tapping some of the public vantage points, it's explaining to students, or say inexperienced or not so experienced colleagues, how huge data amounts work, and the idea of not linear runtime growth, and that in practice. So that used to be a challenge when people came up with great ideas and project proposals, what to measure, and then they wanted to iterate over so much data, and we were like, just from looking at the problem, well, great, but it needs 20 years to be really processed. And that is usually also a challenge, to get the people and the tool chain to a point where they really understand what kind of analysis you can run and is realistic, and where you can sacrifice accuracy in favor of runtime and such things. So they're really practical things as well.
Cool. Have a think about challenges from your own perspectives as well. I'll come back over to Philip just quickly, because you talked about some similar things about storage, and you touched on this before, Philip. Yeah, when you're drawing in 20, 30 years of data, and who's paying the bill, that's the big thing, isn't it? Like what's going on at the moment? Do we need support?
Absolutely, because who's paying the bill is a very relevant question. You know, we're not a commercial thing. This is purely community driven. It was started at University of Oregon, not because the university thought it was a good idea, but because one guy in the computing center, or it was two actually, in the computing center thought, hey, ISPs are saying maybe we should try and do this. And so now, well, it's host the university. Somebody's to keep the lights on, power, electricity. There's the rack space. We've got 60 terabytes of data. That's growing. I mean, I've got a whole raft of issues that Route Fuse is actually facing. I mean, not to be negative about, but it's a whole raft.
Oh, top three.
Yeah. And so funding, definitely. Some of the exchange points, we put physical hardware out. That doesn't last forever. That needs to be replaced. Somebody's got to buy it. Somebody's got to ship it. We're trying to use VMs as much as we can so to make operations easier. But then again, the archive, the storage array, how long does a hard disk drive last? I mean, the manufacturer says 5 years, but is it 5 years, 10 years, 2 years? That all has to be done. The storage array, how old is it? How proprietary is it? Can you get a new power supply for a 10-year-old storage array? No. So it's these type of things we have to keep addressing all the time. And, never mind staff, It was run by volunteers at University of Oregon for many years in their spare time. The recent main lead left to join a big commercial company. So, oh yeah, I'll do this in my spare time. We never saw him again because the new company he joined consumes all his time. I know that. I worked for Cisco for 13 years. It consumed all my time. But staffing then becomes an issue. So where do you get the funding for that staffing? So it's a typical, any community-driven project recognizes that same challenge.
Yeah, I see a lot of nodding heads, and this is the thing, isn't it? We're talking about open IXPs most of the time here, and sustainability. Yeah, and you can definitely follow on with this.
So yeah, this is one of the biggest challenge whenever we are kind of working on a community project and data, something which is coming out of a measurement platform. We have huge amount of data. We tried to solve it in India, kind of building a academic network. There are two parts of it. The first one is the academia, which is involved in research, needs data repository, and there is a very kind of lack of data repositories on these kind of data which the researchers can work. So what we have done is collaborating with research and academic institutions in India. They are hosting our virtual machines as timestamp data. Right now we are working on those things. So these virtual machines are provisioned in their networks, and they are kind of giving us this facility to host the data, surplus data that we are having for the measurements. In turn, we are giving them the access of the repo. So in that way, we are kind of trying to get away with this challenge. But again, it is just starting point. We have around 5 or 6 universities tied up with us, and we are working with the community. So in a way, it's kind of, we need to understand the need of it. And second, the thing is, if there is a need, then definitely they can support.
Yeah, I'm going to come to the need. I'm going to, because I want to get to the successes, and that's the selling point of this. But over to Amrish again, because a big challenge when you're talking with researchers, as Kolkata IX has been, as DECX has been, and as a lot of researchers use route views, is, well, one that I can remember from my days, ethical challenges, and then there's also the thing that I forgot, I think it was Chris that touched on. These projects started a long time ago, and they just keep running, but are they running correctly, and are they being maintained? Can you talk about those?
Yeah, the ethical side of things, definitely this is a something high on our list as researchers when we try to do research. Actually, in most of the conferences now, when you publish a paper, they ask you to put whether you've considered any ethical aspects of the paper. So they are, for example, looking at, are you manipulating any PII, so personally identifiable information? I would say the good thing is that with most open internet data sets, they do not contain any PII. So if you think about DNS or routing data, they do not. But perhaps in your case, because it is passive data, you're possibly dealing with source and destination IPs, which are PIIs. So we do not have, at least from our side, we do not have this, but I know other people have this concern. So definitely, in any type of research that we do, we need to make sure that we, first of all, we have consent from the different parties that we can use their data, and we are not putting anyone at risk as well. What was your second question?
Just keeping these projects going. Yeah.
But maybe let me add to this, because there is this PPI thing, and that is very important for keeping the privacy of people. However, we also have the other challenge that there is business secrets, right? So, and even though we aggregate on prefix level, still we need to not only think about personal data that we unveil, but we potentially unveil business secrets of our customer, and we can't do that under any circumstance. So that's another complication, not only looking at privacy, but also at business, which are governed in different contracts or terms and conditions or whatnot.
Could you expand a little bit on that, Chris? What are you currently trying to do in that respect?
Yeah, it's not so much of what we currently, but I'm sure everyone is aware of things like peering wars in the US, where one network claims that the other that utilizes too much of the interconnects. The others say it's not true, and whether it's paid or not can't be told from a measurement perspective. But you could potentially, even if you aggregate really on AS level, right, and very coarse-grained, like, I don't know, every 5 minutes or every one data point every 10 minutes on this link, you could clearly share a picture of what kind of games your customers might play to convince someone to upgrade or buy from one another, or how they circumvent another network or whatnot, and really unveil the traffic relations and sort of their business strategy.
So this is definitely something that we need to consider if we want to expand internet measurements in IXPs, at singular IXPs, at global IXPs, and regionally. Thank you for that. Again, if you got questions and challenges, shoot your hand up. Yeah. You want to follow on with that one? Yeah. Hey, Stephen.
In route views, because we collect BGP data that has happened, so we see all the route leaks, we see all the misconfigurations, which people then write us and say, that didn't exist. You've got your data wrong. Please take it away. It's not correct. If my government sees this, they'll shut me down. You may think this isn't real. We get those at least once a week. We simply collect the BGP table that we see. And so if somebody's made a misconfiguration, so back to what Chris was saying, misconfiguration, or maybe it's something deliberate or whatever else they were doing for a short term, it's there in the BGP table. And the thing is, it's not in every single collector. It may be in only 2 or 3 collectors. And then they'll say, your collector's wrong, right? Go fix your collector. But no, it was there because somebody transited it somewhere. So, and this is actually a real challenge. What do you do with that? People are begging us, please delete it. Right? We can't delete what has happened. We collect it, REP NCC RIS will have collected it as well. So they go through the RIS collectors trying to find the same thing. So, and never mind all the other private operators, there's BGP tools and all these other ones that are collecting data in the same way. So it's an interesting question. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, replication is it's a really hard thing, and that's a fundamental for any measurement project. Amrish, you might be able to talk about that, but I want to come back to it then to Anand, because manners, then I want to talk about how that gets around it somewhat in terms of networks committing to the cause. But can you talk, what did I say before? Replication, yes.
As I said in my earlier talk today on DNS resilience, the more redundant systems we have, the better. And RIPE RIS and RIPE views are very good examples of how they are collecting kind of the same information, but in different places, sometimes probably in the same places, but fair enough, they are getting a different angle of the same situation. And this is adding value to the research. Of course, now with the abundance of data, we have started. Some researchers have started looking into how can we optimize the fact that we are collecting data everywhere, and there might be a lot of redundant data as well. How can we in some way optimize that? That's a good area of research, and it's good that people are looking into that and how to optimize route collection. But so far, it has been super useful to have different views coming from different collectors. And I also mentioned about PCH, which is doing another type of data collection, having a more localized view rather than having a getting the full routing table from the peers. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it was it working or not working? Oh, anyway. Point being, it doesn't need to just be route views, and they don't want to own the market by the sounds of it, because they keep on getting all the flack for it. But the more and more of these projects that can pop up, and it's simple to pop these things up as well. Again, it started in universities. These things can just be created organically. At the same time, if a community sees the value in this sort of thing, then there seems to be some sort of justification to establish that from the community's aspect. And to a certain extent, it's a bit of a leap here, but this is what Manners has also done. The community has recognized the, for those who aren't aware, mutually agreed norms on routing security, Manners. And that has different pillars. And one of those is targeted at IXPs. And if an IXP agrees to be a Manners community member, then they agree to follow the best current practices associated under the Manners. So Anand, could you talk about why did Kolkata IXP join Manners? And you touched on it earlier that it gave you some extra data to be able to share with their members, and the members to also share with their customers.
Yeah, sure, Robbie. So it was just a organic progression while you were building something from scratch, and need to understand what need to be done next. So after IXP manager, there was something at the security point of view for the peering fabric. Wanted to understand what need to be done. So RPKI was something which needed to be kind of propagated to the ISP so that they could have their zone. So what we have done is Manners was there. So we have implemented Manners, and then we have, and in that part, there was lots of things that you need to do. You need to have route filters, then you need to implement RPKI. You need to work with the peers that they implement RPKI at their end. So whenever things are becoming standard, or it comes as a best practice for the newcomers or something new that is coming up, it is a very good blueprint to follow. And that is coming from a community. And that's why while I was talking earlier, for measurements, there are lots of things that we are doing at the research institutions. Also, we have at different levels we are doing, but there are a few best practices that will say, okay, fine, these are the some of the measurements, like active measurements itself. These are something that if we follow, then these problems could be solved, or kind of we know that the performance can be solved, the resiliency part of it, or something like that. So that kind of a bucket is not there, and even for IXPs, for the ISPs, and for others. So there are lots of things that are happening. So standardizing thing, and definitely in IETF also I've seen that measurement standardization is something which is kind of I don't know, not it's not that talked about. But again, a platform that we have started kind of developing is which are giving us more understanding of the network. What are the problem statements out there? So Manners was something which has kind of given us that scope, and kind of that other like kindness. These are some of the things which are giving us, yes, for measurements also we could have a standard approach, or if not, then at least some best practices.
Yeah, yeah. What would you think that would look like, Amrish, a standard process for IXPs? And then I'm going to bring it over to Philip, because he's had quite experience of setting up IXPs over 30 years.
IXPs or measurements?
Measurements, standardized measurements across IXPs.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah, as Chris is saying, when we are talking about measurement from an IXP point of view, is really about the routing information being exchanged. I think it's pretty fairly standardized. You have data in MRT. Is it MRT format? Yeah, MRT format right now, which can be consumed by which is standardized and then can be consumed by different tools that are being implemented. Perhaps where there need to be a bit more of the standardization is how do we merge or cross-check data plane information and control plane information. So let me explain. Control plane is the data that routers will exchange between one another to basically establish the map of the internet. And control and data plane is, let's say you're running an active measurement now, doing a ping or a trace route from one destination to the other. If it gives you a set of paths along the way, so we have found, we have research studies that found that usually the data plane information they get, for example, after running a trace route, is not in line with what's in BGP, and they usually say sometimes BGP lies. So maybe there need to be some more integration done between the information we see on both sides, so that we have a clearer picture of how things are happening.
Is that possible, Philip, from your perspective?
Well, I mean, but I think as Emrys is saying, yes, for sure, control plane, we know what's all going on. I mean, route views, there's no point looking at the data plane because there isn't one, because what you'll see if you do a trace route is our transit provider and whatever they're able to give us. But, we do get a lot of questions about, well, this is a BGP table and we see these next hops, but, and so on. But the next hop can be, it's just the exchange point LAN. And you shouldn't be able to trace route the internet from any exchange point. Anyway, they're meant to be for local peering, not a replacement for transit. So I don't know if I've really got much more to add. I'm just say, it's pretty much standardized. MRT is used. We're trying to make BMP work. The issues are more the BMP tools and trying to make them operate reliably, which can burn a lot of time. But people want things like that. So what work is needed there? I mean, we're contributing as best as we can. And I don't know about RIPE NCC with RIS, but it's probably the same challenges they're trying to face.
So it's not a challenge. We've kind of established that that's not a challenge. So there, we got that bit sorted. Chris?
Yeah, maybe to add, and I'm sure that that's not that we can technically measure this, but there's the data plane, the control plane, and actually the management plane, or however you want to call it, on top. And that ultimately defines the traffic flows. And that is when I'm in the research community, there's usually the discussion, we have proof that this happened, or we see this pattern, but we totally lack understanding why it is happening, or why is it recurring, or why. These questions are super hard to answer. I mean, that's what the researchers also do, but they do it sort of anecdotally, right? So, and I can't really envision the system that basically keeps all your secret in one system. So I don't see it happening, but that is like going down the road, explainability of internet and really increasing the understanding of the internet. So would probably go in this direction.
And this is where the discussion stems from. Like, how can IXPs offer greater visibility of evolution of the internet, current traffic trends, but also the evolution of the internet? And I know your data has been used quite extensively in tracking hypergiants in Europe predominantly, is it, or globally?
Not only in Europe. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So could you talk a little bit about how the data has been used in that respect? And
so with the hypergiants, or more with so what we recently really did is what's super beneficial, and this is just like also an anecdote how you could use the data. But if you have different passive measurements of data plane data, and you correlate this globally, This helps in cases of these misconfigurations, or you want to really understand global patterns of larger networks. However, also on the different combinations of the local footprints of the local differences. But where it also really helped was DDoS attacks. So you might spot a DDoS attack at one part of the world like 2 minutes before it hits the other side of the world. And if you correlate this data, you're much better in really detecting, but also predicting. And I think we've written a paper about this as well.
Fantastic. Now, yeah, Anand, yeah, you're itching to talk about this.
Kind of. I'll just add to it. And while I was talking about standardization, it may make a sense or not. But the fact is, yes, at the control plane and at the data plane, things are pretty much standardized. But whenever we're trying to correlate or integrate things, and if I'm talking about a next decade of internet, think of the visualization, wherein things will be more at the edge, more at the IXPs, and users would be more into kind of reaching out these data. And kind of if we can have a standardized way to integrate and understand what should be there, and it could be more visible understanding of the way internet is behaving, and troubleshooting things in a more standard way. We have seen things from different perspectives, different layers. But again, whenever we are trying to have some applications which will be critical for a reason, like if you are talking about vehicles which are driverless, we are having applications which are very critical and they need far more resilience, far more security, far more performance. Then we need to have some standard way to correlate data, and these data which are available and at the redundant places also, community projects are there. But again, how far we can go with these things where things are not in a proper shape and we are kind of witnessing everything and anything on internet. That's something which is more challenging.
But we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
We're having the conversation. That's the
Yes,
starting
yes,
point.
yes.
You got to start somewhere. That's what we want. But I want you to continue now. This you wanted to say it before, but what you've started in Kolkata IX has kind of evolved into India's first indigenous internet measurement system. And if you haven't heard about it, you talked about it at the Pulse Internet Measurement Forum. There might be a recording. Otherwise, there's a Pulse blog on it. Go check it out. But can you talk about that evolution from IXP measurement, how that stemmed towards, how it kind of inspired your group's thinking and the need for an indigenous measurement system?
Sure. Thank you. So this is something which is kind of evolved from a community initiative, and I always talk about it kind of a bottom-up approach, wherein we have started working with the community, giving them understanding of the names and numbers, the deployment part of it, and how to work on the best practices of operations. Then one time we have experimented with root servers also. So along with IXPs, we have kind of had first a root server in Kolkata. And everybody was talking about kind of it will have 200 or 300 queries per second, but we had around 2000 queries and we need to set it down, because again, we need to work with the ISPs to have it back. And that kind of thing we surprised us, that what is happening around there. Is there any routing detour that is happening or something at the DNS level? Is there any IX that is needed or any other measurement system that is there? So RIPE ANSYS, RIPE Atlas, we have seen quite few measurement anchors we had. And that time we approached different stakeholders to support us, and then government has started supporting us. And we have established a measurement network in India. The core things was we didn't wanted to reinvent the wheel. The things that was there, it was we didn't want to do this. The first thing that was very much important was kind of understanding of traffic or the understanding of internet at the user level. So we had anchors, but these are Raspberry Pi anchors having Dockers implemented, and we have distributed anchors which could run any kind of measurement, whether it is ripency or any other. So it was kind of a very flexible architecture we thought we would have. Second thing that was very important for us to underpinning of this is something a need analysis that come forward, that who will support this. So there are in academia in India, there's we have seen that on protocols and standards, very few people are working. So we have a reference architecture where these researchers and students could work on standards and protocols development and also do research. And we should have a data repository along with us. So here is a system that we had where we have standards development. Some of the students, faculties, and then researchers are working on source codes over there, working on more research. And that's where I'm coming, that the challenge of the control plane, data plane, and others, and then we need to have a standardized approach. So this measurement platform has all at one. So we will be working with root views also, kind of PCH style, to having those data with us, the anchors which will give us the data planes view, and some of the new protocol standards which is required for the measurement. And we wish to continue with this measurement network to evolve. That's something we are doing it from last 4 to 5 years. And 100 anchors right now across India, 5 Anycast instances. And that's also there. We wanted to do an end-to-end measurement because the packets are encrypted. And from the need out of it, these servers will be used by the ISP so that they can have their own DNS setup over there in this reference architecture. That's there in our IXPs also. That is also collecting roots over there. So these are some of the things that are there. And we have done a story in Pulse, and maybe there are more things that we will start publishing what we are doing over there. Thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to seeing what comes of it. Amarish, can you talk about why it's important to get this local perspective and the advantages of having an indigenous measurement system in place?
Yeah, the reason why it's important is because each market has its own dynamics, and things that you might see at a global level might not be the actual reality on the ground. And
So it's validation.
It's validation, yes, validation of the data. So again, it's important to have both views. You have the global view where you get some amount of understanding, but then if you have more localized view, for example, if you use a system like the one from Anand, we will be able, for example, to do trace route from all the different places and see what are the hops in between them and which routes they are taking. We might get this information a little bit from the global perspective, but it will not be as detailed as what a local system would provide you.
I want to wrap it up here shortly, but not sure who to ask of this, but what do you think industry can do to support IXPs towards, grabbing? What can the industry do to support IXPs in developing such a measurement project? Philip, do you want this? Yeah, you start it.
Well, things cost money. The people who are benefiting from the measuring systems, quite a lot of these are commercial organizations who sell products and services and everything else. Please return some of the proceeds of what you have done to help the volunteers and exchange points and everywhere else who are putting all this information, who are putting all this infrastructure in place, usually out of goodness of hearts, donations, generosity. A lot of us have been around a long time and we want the internet to work. We want it to keep working. We need to measure it to make sure it does keep working. But, having to go cap in hand every other week, begging for another few $1,000s, and yet we look at a lot of organizations who are making millions and millions and millions out of product and services based on the community-driven measurement system from all this infrastructure. Looking for a little bit of philanthropy from some of these organizations rather than just take. It's not a criticism, it's just an observation. Please think where you got the data from, and please help the people who are trying to Well, struggle to scale to give all the data. We've covered lots of different ways. There's a lot more we can talk about, to, just try and help the people who are making huge amount of effort to get this data which you are benefiting from. That's what I want to say.
Chris, from a commercial IXP perspective.
From commercial IXP perspective.
Not working.
From a commercial IXP perspective, from someone working in academia for quite some years and still with half a leg into it, is take some of your time. Because researchers, when they reach out to you, reply to the mails, maybe share some anonymized data with them, because they have really, I mean, we don't have time, right? We don't have enough time. We have too much stuff on our today's to-do list. However, the researcher has basically, he might has found the proof for something or a hint in the data, but now he needs to confirm, and that is the super big challenge for the researchers. And you are maybe the only ones who can really give them sort of ground truth. And that would be super helpful if ever a researcher reaches out to you at such a conference, through mail, any other platform, Twitter, whatnot. Take your 10 minutes and try to help. That would be of great value.
And maybe you can talk about government support, because that's what you've essentially got with being able to establish this Indian measurement network.
Yeah, so government plays a big role, big part over here. Whenever we have even approached to lot many organizations at that time, even lots of funding requests we have done. And there lies when Amrish says that there is a local perspective that is needed. All the global organizations thought that that was not the need. And that's a harsh reality. And we have approached. So then whenever we have approached the local authorities and the government, and they realized, yes, something that is very much needed, because we had data. We wanted to make them understand that this is something which is need of the hour. And let's say if a country or anything, the things are becoming digital society, everything is digital. In India, you have a UPI payment that's works like wonder. So you have digital platforms that works on systems and networks. And if we cannot measure, we cannot evolve. That's something which is very important. And I think I've heard this Amrish saying in one of the panel discussions. So it's something very crucial to understand localized view and understanding of the measurements. And it is very important for the government to realize this, that this is something which is need of the hour. And if we wanted to have it better, more resilience, more security, scalability of the network, and understanding underpinning the more challenging areas, which if sometimes it may be from the global perspective that there is no problem. But again, if we can say that, yes, there is a problem with that reason for that. So there is a local measurement that is needed. And yes, government has a role to play. And I think in our case, we had got the support so that we could go into it. Thank you.
Cool. Gabriel, could you shift those slides along near the end? My clicker's died. Keep going. Keep going. I'll tell you when. Go, 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 go. There. Back to that one. The Internet Society offers support too in this respect. Yes, set it up. So we have, and this is currently open. There's grants. It's not about, you've already established, you've done the hard work in establishing these IXPs. And these grants are open to help you evolve, as Anand was saying, to grow, and doing some of this fundamental research and trying something at least. Collectively, you could look at something to do with regards to what we've been talking about today. So that money's there. That's one of several opportunities as well. But I really like what y'all have kind of said. It comes back to money. We all know that, whether you're commercial or whether you're community, it's a difficult business that we're running, and we're only doing it out of kindness of hearts most of the time and don't get the recognition that we get. But we understand the importance of it, and at least people at this conference understand the importance of it. And that's why we're coming together today about it. The last question I had on the whole thing was, do you see a need for this? Do you see there's something to it? Why not? So you've been quiet. I've set you up all day for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. My name is Jamris Yeros. I'm from TLNOC. This TLNOC is the youngest NOG in the Asian Pacific last year. This is really interesting topic discussion. My question is, just a moment. TLNOC is Timor-Leste Network Operational Group. So I just direct to my question. So with the nation, with tiny nation with 3 operators telco and around 11 or 12 ISP there, but still with the 0 IX. So, but my question is, what is the mechanism, certain measurement certain measurement system for to identify network bottleneck, and how to address them proactively? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. You mentioned how many ISPs are there? Around 11. And no IXP. So definitely, which means that a lot of traffic is going international to fetch content, right? And it makes total sense to have an IX in the country. Perhaps starting with a data neutral, carrier neutral data center, and then add on top of that an IXP, which will then allow ISPs in the country to exchange traffic between one another, and this will also attract content providers, because usually content providers they think it's better to go to an IXP instead to one ISP, because otherwise they will have to replicate their caches in each of those ISPs. Yeah, so the Internet Society provides support for places where there is no IXPs. So I would, if your community is interested, you should definitely reach out to the Internet Society, and we have people to help you out to get something started.
That QR code will come up again. Thanks, guys. There we go. Yeah, we're here to support. Chris, actually, was talking about bottlenecks, and do you look at like markets globally when DECIX thinks there's an opportunity somewhere? That's obviously you're looking from a commercial perspective, but at the same time you recognize the importance of IXs. How do you look at the markets out there, and is bottlenecks the thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, on the one hand, we're listening to the communities, right? Is there an interest? Is there a need? What they're telling us. But on the other side, as you mentioned, I mean, we're running 40 IXs globally, and we certainly need to look into the business case, and the business case needs to make sense to us to enter markets, right?
Yep. Comes to money again. Anyone else? It's your opportunity. Yes.
It's my name is Tariq, and I'm an associate professor in Sarawak, University of Technology Sarawak at Borneo Island. So I can say it's some sort of a layman question or a comment. We really found during COVID that the governments, the people have mistrust on the figures and the data provided by the government and telecommunication companies in terms of internet quality of service. So even currently, for example, for Malaysia, the 4G internet coverage is mentioned at about 96%. while the user experience is not the same. So if we look at this data at the IXP level and the measurement in the tool, so to believe on a number, I think it's important that you have a second number to measure. So I can see value here that this data can provide, but of course, the data which the government is providing at the QoS level, it's very simplistic in terms of latency, up, download, and for I'm not sure how many of us know at this room, Malaysia and at the quality of service level, Malaysia doesn't measure the upload speed of broadband services. So it's not one of the one, which is really a shocking one in terms of when we are looking at the developmental perspective of internet services at the value of that. So it's the quality of service measurement was only on the download speed. So I can see value here, I think, but to bring this data to holistic way for a layman, I think there may be some role to be played. So that's just my comment.
It's very good. Thank you, Tarek. Yeah, I'm glad that you're in the room because sometimes this can just be an echo chamber. So we need to hear those sort of things at the same time. Did anyone want to comment on that?
I think so. I translate the comment like from the 4G radio access network to like the backbone infrastructure where we're sitting, and the point is well taken. So what he's telling us is, please make the data usable, understandable for layman's, right? So that everyone can benefit from it. And I have to agree that we actually we got better over the past years, but basically most of the stuff is not consumable by my mother, right? And that is probably the question you need to ask. If my mother understands it, at least if I explain it to her quickly, then it's the right abstraction for most of the people in this country and around the world.
Yeah, good point in that respect. And also, what I also took from it was there is value in having this additional data point to be able to help with validating or disproving what is out there or what is claimed at least. Last question, and then we can go warm up. You don't need to put it at. I'm gonna call it 7 minutes early. That's all right. These guys have done well up here because it's really cold. At least you all got long sleeves. I'm shivering. You do have a question? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, my name is Gio from GetAfix. One of the things that I guess, need help from is whenever we try to measure the impact of what IXPs are doing, we try to talk to governments, to ISPs and stuff like that. It's always hard to get like good data. I mean, we say, oh, we take, traffic that goes outside, we try to make it local. But it's kind of hard to you really say it's all theoretical. So is there a way to help like us and other IXPs, because I'm sure you guys have the same problems, to kind of like have some sort of real world data that we can say, oh, the Philippines is moving this much outside, but if we can localize this, then this is the effect, and there's an impact to the economy, to society and stuff that we can communicate.
Yeah, thank you, Gio. Yeah, I know we had a chat about that, but that's a very good question. Yeah, the Internet Society, what we are trying to do is understanding the network benefits of peering. And the benefits is not only technical. It's not only latency and the amount of traffic. It should also amount to some cost factor. So usually peering is cheaper in many countries. So it means that ISPs are going to save money by peering. And if they save money, it means that they can use this money to invest in some other parts of the network, maybe to increase the reach of the network, to have better quality equipment, so on and so forth. So we hope, so there is a hypothesis there that an increase in peering has an impact on the economy. And how do you measure the impact on the economy? We'll look at GDP, we'll look at other factors such as their resilience or the network readiness score as measured by, let's say, the UN or other countries. So what we are doing at the moment is trying to correlate this information with those, I would say, more general indicators about network readiness and see whether there is an impact, long-term impact. We need to do that over, let's say, the last 10 years and see whether there has been an impact.
That's what we're doing. Yep. Yeah, you can say something.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I've been involved with exchange points since 1994, and it's always a very difficult business case because the transit traffic is proprietary information to the transit provider. It's Timor-Leste's problem as well. How do they find out how much Timor-Leste would benefit if they had an exchange? Well, they don't know because the monopoly transit provider, it's secret for them. And so, you know, how many exchange points have I helped with? It's the same old problem. It's how to take that leap of faith. But you can look at every single case study where an exchange point has been set up around the world. I mean, gosh, you know, how many times I've been told, oh, Philip, you don't understand. We're different here. We don't need an exchange, you know. It's all working very well, but, you know, tiny amount of traffic. So I don't know. I feel the pain, you know, with the same issue, PH Open IX starting all those years ago, trying to persuade Philippine operators to join it. And it was just like, and you've had that starting Getafix as well, still trying to persuade government and everybody else. Because on the other hand, you have a lobby group from the incumbents who say, no, 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 don't need exchange. We will do all this and we will make traffic go faster than the speed of light and all this other nonsense that they end up doing. So it's a hard job, but you know, the industry understands what it needs, and it's, you know, as Amrish is saying, gathering all that type of data, information, economic benefit, case studies from other places, similar economies. We all have to just use that as part of the process. And you know, getting providers on side, individual providers who might benefit if they look at what their traffic is, use things, you know, flow information, if they're willing to, at least when you're trying to get an exchange set up, have a look at individual flow data from operators who are interested. You get some idea of what could be local and what could be international. It's quite a bit of work, and I've been doing it for a long time, but I'm afraid there's no easy answer.
Yep. It's contextualizing it, isn't it? Yeah. And we talked a little bit about all the different things along the way, government support, industry support, and so forth. It's just finding those champions and working together, hopefully. I'm going to call it. Can you all please give my panel a round of applause? Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to you all. And I hope this conversation continues. It'd be good to be able to come back in next year or the year after, and there is some sort of discussion surrounding this. Anyway, thank you all.